What is up, guys? Welcome back to another Vern's Supercoach video. This time we are doing the NBL Round 3 review. And as we can see, we're making a slow climb by putting together a 390 for the week, which means our round rank of 719 has moved us up one seasonal position again to rank 13. So at this rate, we've gone from 15 to 14 to 13. Give us 12 more rounds and we'll be rank 1. So it's a slow climb, but we are getting there. Overall, not a too disappointing result. I thought we were going to have a bigger week, and then a few of our players, I guess, just didn't get it together. But overall, pretty good outcome for us. So we'll jump into the team, have a bit of a look at it. Now, I feel like I should have really gone over the games rather than individual players, but we do have Milton. So we had this first game here, I guess, Tasmania versus Illawarra. Taz ended up stomping them, and a little bit unfortunate here. Doyle is one rebound away from a double-double. He also there was a few assists he threw in the first quarter, probably 4 assists in the first quarter. One of them went through Dremich's hands. One of them, I don't even remember their center's name, but I'm going to say Lee. Yeah, I think it's Lee. He fumbled it and couldn't score. And then he had 2 kickouts to corner threes that his teammates just missed. And it's really unfortunate because as much as that's obviously scoring for other players too, it was 8 points to Doyle. I mean, just from those alone. Even if they hit half of them, it's 4 points. I mean, as our captain, it's double points, so it's 8 there. But it's very valuable for us, and it's just unfortunate his team couldn't quite get it together. And it felt like I actually thought he was losing the double-double off the assists that his teammates were missing. And then from to get the 9 rebounds as well, like, wow, he really left a double-double on the table. Like, he left a 50-plus on the table easily. He put 42 down in this game. I think he really should have been able to put together a 50, and it felt like for non-owners, they kind of got bailed out a little bit because he should have gone bigger than the 42 he put down. So a little bit disappointing there. Might have been 41 actually that he put down, now that I think about it. The other big factor in this was everyone went Robinson this week. He was the most traded in player of the week, and he just did not get going. He had a lot of turnovers, and he could not make a shot early. Look, I wasn't too impressed by him when he did play Southeast Melbourne. Like, a lot of people were really on the Robertson train, but I mean, I'm sure if you watched my video last week, I was sort of just saying, if you had the money for it, like, if you don't have much cash, he's the cheapest guy there, so grab him. But like, I was definitely more tempted towards these Selby picks, if possible, or even Cotton I was more happy with. Now, obviously he bounced back, but I mean, the reason he had a massive game. He scored 40 plus against South Melbourne, but he played South Melbourne without a real center, where Creek was sort of playing that center position for them, so they had no rim protectors, so we just got free baskets at the rim, and we just knew that wasn't going to happen again. At least I felt like that wasn't going to happen again. And look, I do think he's a good player, but I don't think he was to the standard that everyone saw in that South Melbourne game and what everyone was expecting from him. So that's the reason I didn't personally go for him, but a lot of people had a lot of hype around him. A lot of people put the captaincy on him as well. And he ended up disappointing, which was pretty unfortunate for people. I think he had 27% of the competition had the captaincy on him. 27% of the top 1%, I think. And then like 37% of the top 1% had Doyle. But the next game that I guess they're the only relevant players there. I mean, Crawford went massive for the very small percentage that went onto Crawford, so congrats there. And I forget their center's name. Gosh, I want to just click on the list real quick. Center's name for Illawarra. I can't believe I just blanked on it. Froling, there we go. Froling also had a good week too, 51. Not bad from him. But yeah, I think it might just be a bit better going through the format like this, where I talk about the players as I talk about the games, sort of thing. Because otherwise I feel like it's a bit too much talking about everything. Next one, obviously, this is Sydney-Brisbane game. Sydney kind of blow this game out, and Galloway ends up with a better game than Valentine. Not by much. He kind of puts the gap on him in the next game, but ended up picking the wrong Sydney player to be on field this week, which is a little disappointing. 13 points difference, which is 6.5 points because of the half points you get that I've lost from my score. So first week I've really had the wrong players on the field, but first week I've really had that decision where I've needed to pick between the two, because the first few weeks it's really been your rookies and your premiums, and Galloway's just performed at a level that he's basically a premium, and he ended up being the player I should have had on field, and a lot of people did. I think like 73% of Galloway on field, 27 on the bench, and I was one of those, unfortunately. Valentine, once again, I think just very unlucky. He makes a lot of really good passes, but then he makes a lot of turnovers from trying to force passes too. And that's the really iffy thing with him, where it's like there's a lot of turnovers. He should be getting a lot of points of assists, but it's just not really happening for him. And then he's not scoring a lot either. So where is his Supercoach points really coming from? So yeah, a bit underwhelming from him and a bit unfortunate. He wasn't the pick to bring in, apparently, but most of the competition did jump on him, so not the end of the world. On the other side, though, Sobi put down a 33 in this game, so it was really good by him, really brought it back at the end of the game. It was a little unfortunate that, in reality, Brisbane were in this situation last week against Cairns, and they ended up making a 3-point game because Sobi went nuts at the end. In this game, Sobi scored some junk time balls, but he wasn't hitting the threes that he was against Cairns that really brought them into the game. He just couldn't sink those at the end. Last week, Sobi would have been hitting those. He would have made this a 1-point game, and he would have scored an extra 10 points Supercoach-wise. So, but unfortunately, he didn't get there. He got a lot of rebounds, though, and, he's just a good Supercoach scorer. Regardless of what you think of him as a player, he's a good Supercoach scorer, and that's what we like. He shoots the ball a lot, and it doesn't matter that he misses, but he will score eventually, and that's what we want on our team. So pretty happy with that from him. McDaniels, though, had a pretty bad game. He only put 8 points down. This is where DJ Mitchell's coming back has actually really hurt him. He's no longer the starting player. His minutes have really been cut, and there's a lot less time to try and get, I guess, some sort of stats on the board. So a bit unfortunate there. Somebody that maybe you move on. But for the strategy I've set up, I do want to be, I guess, holding him in the meantime. His break-even's only 22, so it's not too crazy high. But obviously, as I said, one of those games he put down an 8, other one he obviously put down a 14, so it does look like he might be backtracking this week. So it ended up being that really funny thing I find here is, as I mentioned, for Doyle and McDaniels, both of those were players that we couldn't actually compare them over last week's game. Yes, we brought them in last week, but because they had 2 doubles in a row, we had to sort of compare them over a 2-week sample size. At the end of the day, Jalen Adams ends up being the better pick than Doyle because he gets to 70 this week, so 8 more points, and then he beat him by 2 last week, so 10 total points more for Jalen Adams owners, and most people would have had the captaincy on him for both games too, so actually 20 points extra for those that went for him, so a little bit unfortunate there. And then McDaniels, who outscored Tui last week pretty handsomely, but Tui outscored him pretty handsomely this week, and because of the way the break-evens are, Tui's going to keep making money and McDaniels won't. Saying that just because of the way my team's fallen, though, it wouldn't have really worked last week if I did have Tui. I mean, technically I would have had Tui up here, meaning I would have probably ran Galloway on field, meaning Valentine would have ended up on the bench. Could have been a lot better for me if I actually went this Tui route. Unfortunately, we went for McDaniels, and at the end of the day, it wasn't the correct pick, unfortunately, but we will probably hold on to him in the meantime. Then we have the Perth-Melbourne game. Melbourne's such a defensive team, really keep the scoring down low. Saar put up 30 points in that game. Henshaw put down, I think, 2 in that game. So yeah, not ideal from them. And Hook Porty and Travers didn't put down good scores either. I think Hook Porty got 17 points. Travers 21. So a little bit disappointing there. It was a low scoring game Supercoach wise. I think it might even almost be better to be looking at them like this when I talk about it, so then everyone can sort of see what I'm saying. So yeah, I remember Pinder going big, Pinder also getting hit in the face and having to come off for a period of time. So Saar obviously went ballistic there. Yeah, Codden had a down game too, so I was feeling pretty good about the Sobi over Codden pick, and at the end of the day, Sobi did score more, so he was the correct pick, and he made more money, which was great. Do level 1 out early, so if anyone's for some reason on him, they got super punished. Goulding had a good game, and yeah, Delhi had a good game. So when Goulding is shooting well, it's hard to look past him. But I think the other problem for Travers and Hook Porty this week is Lowe actually was really good when he was on, so it was hard to take Lowe off, which meant that their minutes were naturally down, but also just he was putting score on the board. He was putting Supercoach points up, so obviously they were points that our boys weren't getting, unfortunately. Jumping down to, let's see, Adelaide, Illawarra. Kel came out with a massive game, and obviously Adelaide win here, which just shows how bad both these teams are. Robertson doesn't really bounce back. He puts down an 18, so super disappointing for people. Technically in game 1 he bounced back a little bit and got them to 22 in the final quarter. He scored like probably 18 points in the final quarter. Like he went ballistic. But ended up with 44 owners overall and not a great outcome for what they wanted. Kel ends up looking really good here. Wiley's doing pretty standard stuff. So they are on the double this week, so maybe people are looking at them. I think a lot of people are trading in Flowers off this 31, and I just don't think that's a good idea. Technically, Flowers was averaging 6 a game before this game. And yeah, he went ballistic. He hit a bunch of threes and he had a great game. But from what we've seen from him, that's going to be, like, his good games are going to be few and far apart. I don't see him backing that up again this week. Yes, he doesn't have to technically have a good game to make money, but we're not just bringing someone into our team to just not make money and then trade out again next week. Like, if you're bringing in someone of his price, you want him to be there for a little while making money for you. So he's not the pick for me. I do think, honestly, Kel and Wiley could be not bad options this week if that's what your cash allows you, because I do think on this week only United, Southeast Melbourne and Adelaide have the double. So at the end of the day, I feel like we're looking for like 1 week rentals, personally. But I do think they're good 1 week rental options if you're going down that path. Obviously, the other thing, I'll talk about trades later, but yeah, we'll jump into the next game. Southeast versus Tasmania. Did not expect Southeast to get up here, and this is another game where Doyle lets us down. Like, he goes begging for a score. He was on 14 at quarter time, and he finishes on 21, so 7 more points. What happened is he got up to, I think, 17, and then might have even been more than 17 actually, might have been 18, and he went ahead and did like 5 turnovers in a row and all of a sudden ended up on 8 points. And it was nuts. He got benched after that and ended up coming back. And, you know, I guess if you look at it, it's still not even good if you look at the second half of the game where he was on like 8 points at halftime, finished up 21. He still only scored 13 in like the second half of the game. But this was the Crawford show. Crawford was taking over this game. Crawford was hitting shots and just Doyle wasn't really needed to an extent. But at the same time, super unfortunate because if he doesn't get all those turnovers for us, if he carries on with those 14 points, he started cooking at the end when he got to this 21 as well. And we had Dang taking 2 shots with like 1.4 on the clock. They're down by 2. He hits the first one. If he hits the next one, I'm pretty sure NBL play overtime. I haven't actually looked at that, but I'm going to naturally assume they play overtime. If he hits that shot, they're going to overtime. Doyle finally started cooking. Doyle was probably going to go off. He has been clutch, and he probably would have put a 30-plus on the table. I mean, as I said, if he didn't get a few turnovers there as well, but there was a lot of reasons he should have been pushing a 30-plus on this game. And Dang misses the shot. Creek grabs the rebound, and the game ends with South Melbourne winning by a point. Which is just super frustrating for us Doyle owners because he to miss that, a big time free throw, and you missed it. Oh, that just isn't good enough, and he really should have hit that shot. As I said, overtime hits, Doyle goes up. As I said, Doyle let a double-double go begging in the first game. I reckon this man really should have got a 75 plus, if not an 80 plus this week, and he non-owners got absolutely bailed out because Doyle should have gone off. And as I said, at the end of the day, Jalen Adams ends up being the better pick. But if he just gets a little bit of that going and he does get towards the 75, then he ends up being the better pick sort of thing. So it was really about just a game of inches for Doyle where he was so close but just quite didn't get it to going off. And it's a funny thing to look at it in this retrospect too, because Doyle put down a 62 for us, which week 1 we got a 62 from Cotton and we were super happy with it. Week 2 we got a 65 from Doyle. We were super happy with it. And then we get a 62 from Doyle again and we're upset with it. And it's just a thing of perspective, I think. In week 1, obviously what happened is there wasn't a lot of high scores. Like, I think the highest was like 68 and whatnot. So I think there was a few like higher scores, but Doyle was technically the eighth highest overall. So not even a bad score. I think that the big difference here was, as I mentioned, if someone starts off slow, like Doyle did last week, he got the 25 and then he put together like a 41 or whatever it was to get to this, I think 62. So no, he put together 38 to get to the 37? 26. Either way, he got to like 62, but it was because he did it off a big second game. And we were just like, oh yeah, what a finish sort of thing. But this time he's done it the other way around, where he has had a big first game and he honestly let a few points go begging. And then a small second game feels like he feels like he just didn't get there. And it's funny in that retrospect that in reality, this is a good captain score. It's still a good overall score. He did well for us in this 2-week period. And we've had 3 good captain scores, but it just feels like it just didn't really happen this week, which is funny in a perspective kind of way to look at that and be like, it's the exact same score as score 1 the week 1 that we were happy with. 3 points lower than week 2 that we were happy with. Why are we upset with this? And as I said, just a thing of perspective. Just because he cooked early, and then it just felt like he let a big score go begging. But jumping back to that game, honestly, Creek was pretty good in this game. He was pretty good. Cummings didn't quite get it together, but Brown went off, which was nuts for him, and he ends up winning them a game with a big 3. Isn't a pick anymore. Cook isn't there, so I'm expecting Williams to be back this coming week. McVeigh actually had a pretty good week overall, so McVeigh pickers, I guess, wouldn't be too unhappy with the outcome that they got from him. Assuming that you brought him in last week, of course. Second game for Melbourne, Huckporty gets it together, gets a double-double, 28 points. Awesome, feels so good. Honestly, they crushed Brisbane. Brisbane are lucky to get the 78 points. They just hadn't really scored all game. And then, Goulding had a good game again. Lowe had another good game, and maybe that affects Travers. Travers also got, I think, he got elbowed in the face in the Wildcats game where he had blood nose as well, so that did affect his scoring. And then Delhi got knocked out, concussion tech, didn't actually get knocked out. And Ian Clark didn't have a good game either. So, these Melbourne boys just unfortunately haven't been hitting the highs that we saw in week 1. Lucky for us, Sobey got to 32 and ended up being just a really good pick overall. Shannon Scott actually put together a 68 because he got 40 in the first game, so really good from him. And Harris ended up being a really good bring-in for anyone that brought him in, so really nice there. Smith, underperforming, honestly. And then McDaniel and DJ Mitchell. It's just a hard one there. Mitchell goes massive game 1 and then not too good here. And then McDaniel, he had an 8 and then a 14. Unfortunately, it's just not great overall. We want a bit more from him too. Melbourne really defensively just shut teams down, which make life a bit harder. And then Sydney end up blowing out Wildcats. Honestly, Boland goes big, Adams goes big, 235s back-to-back, so very consistent. Galloway gets to a 22, Tui ends up with a 17, and Valentine just on a 13. He had so many turnovers. He was actually on track for a good score, and then he just threw the ball out of court 4 times in a row and just butchered his score and lost us so many points. Cotton comes back with a 32, so gets him to a 62 for anyone that went for that play, so the same as any Doyle owners. So you're pretty happy with that. And then Pindar had a bit of a low game, same with Saar. Henshaw actually got up and got a 10, which was really important for us in the last few minutes of the game that he got to play. So that was just super important for us to end up getting a reasonable score overall. Probably rambled a little bit too much about the games, but I do like talking about them. Going into this week, obviously, as I mentioned, Adelaide, South Melbourne, and Melbourne who are playing, and then we have New Zealand who are back from their bye. So PJC is definitely an option for people, 277k as a guard. If I do just jump into the players overall and we do look at averages, he does have the highest average because he came out with the 57 in game 1. But then 29 in game 2, so still pretty good game 2 score. His break-even's really nice and low, and he's going to make a lot of money when he plays. So the question here that I think is dwelling on people is, do you bring him in right now on a single game for the cash grab, or do you wait a week and grab him on his double? And that's something that I'm really tossing up too, because the cash grab is going to be very, very nice doing that this week. But if you do go down the line and we do look at one of these players from either Adelaide, South Melbourne, or Melbourne, honestly, Melbourne not really ticking my fancy, but I think Brown, Cummings look really good, and their matchups were really good too. And then we do have Kell and Wiley, who aren't bad either, in my opinion. But looking at South Melbourne's matchups, they have Adelaide and Brisbane. And we saw Brisbane bleed a lot of points in their games to Sydney. And they didn't bleed a lot to Melbourne, but Melbourne just isn't offensively based. So I think they are really good matchups for Brown or Cummings to go off. And the other thing is Melbourne is against New Zealand, so PJC could definitely be slowed down in that game. I would be surprised if he got higher than 30. I would expect him to get less than 30 points. I'd expect Brown and Cummings to probably get more than 60. So you're probably making a 30 plus point gain, but you're not going to make as much money if you jump on PJC this week. So I guess that's just something to take into account. The other thing to take into account is if you want Armstrong in your team ASAP, or if you want to wait a week, because Armstrong can come in week 5 if you want, or you can wait till week 6 because he hasn't played a game yet. So when he gets the double game in week 5, it's not really a big deal. I mean, I'd love to get Henshaw off my field ASAP, but at the same time, like, it's not detrimental. Like, we could make more aggressive plays than bringing in Armstrong that week, and that's something to consider. So it's really, if I bring PJC in personally, it means that I'm going to be going for Armstrong the next week, because he'll definitely, I think, score more than Henshaw. He'll be on the double games, he'll score more, he'll be a better bench pick, but it's a bench pick at the end of the day. How many points are we truly making there? Probably not as much as the 30-point gap that we will get if we go for, in my opinion, Brown or Cummings. So yeah, I think 30 points there, maybe. Armstrong makes like 10 extra points on the bench, obviously 20 and then half to 10 extra points. So that's a 20-point gap. How much extra money did you get off PJC? Was it really worth it? That's where the questions come in, and that's where we've got to weigh up which one is the most optimal play to go for. Me personally, now, look, I'm moving Doyle on just because at the end of the day, if I want PJC next week and I'm going to be keeping Sobey through his double games, then there's no room for Doyle anyway. Doyle just, somebody ends up on the bench and it's just not optimal for the team. So it's not an ideal outcome, but we'll jump down the averages. As I see, we can see PJC up there, but I would much rather be looking, as I said, at Brown and Cummings, and it's a hard one here because I think Cummings has a higher scope for scoring. He definitely gets more steals, and it feels like he's definitely scoring more often. But Brown has a much better break even. So, I mean, that's really the three ways to look at this. You're bringing in PJC, you're bringing him in for money, not the score, and maybe a better week 4 depending on your structure. For me, it's not personally going to matter my week 4 structure, so I'm going to have a full 5 on court that week anyway. And then we can look at Cummings, who's purely for the score. He's not for the money. And then Brown, who's kind of in the middle of them. He's going to be getting a better score, but he may also, like, he's going to probably make money too. Not as much as PJC, probably not going to score as much as Cummings, but he hits that sweet middle ground. And that's where the question comes. Do we play for that sweet middle ground, or do we just go balls to the wall, just go ham and play for Cummings upside? I personally really love Cummings upside because he really does get steals, and he's against, as I mentioned, weaker teams this week, Adelaide and Brisbane, who do not handle the ball well. Cummings could definitely get a lot of steals in this game and really run away with a big score. But yeah, he does have a 61 here, and this 19 is going to be the only relevant score with this 61. So these first 2 games aren't relevant in his price, and that 19 is what's hurting his price at the moment and forcing him to sort of get a pretty decent score here. Where Brown, as we mentioned, he has the 40 here, so the 40 is in his cycle for this game, instantly just making it much higher as it is, so he doesn't have to perform as well in these games. Break even actually at a 50, that's projected, sorry, his break even's at 45. Sorry, Cummings, I must have looked at that wrong then too. What was Cummings' break even? Was 65, so he's got 20 less on the break even game. They're roughly the same price. As I just said, who's actually the better pick here? It's a bit of a hard one to say. I personally want to play for points, so I'm sorry, PJC. The way I worked this out originally is you were always coming in for me on week 5. That's how I'd always sort of set this up. Miller and PJC are the 2 that I guess you can compare at this stage, but I do think Miller has obviously McCall come back, and he has Armstrong come back. That's going to affect him, so I don't think he's going to be putting out this 32.3 average anymore because he has other guards coming in that will affect him. Where PJC, I mean, he had McDoyle White come in, obviously, but it didn't really affect him. I mean, he still put down a 29 even with him in the team, and nothing else is really going to affect that. So I do think he'll be a really solid pick, but I'm personally looking at him for week 5. And then it's just, as I said, the real 50-50 split here between Brown and Cummings. Oh, man. I think I'm going to play for Cummings upside personally. We're going to go for Cummings upside currently because, as I said, it's too good. Valentine straight out of our team too, because he is just hot garbage. No, he's not, but he's not what we thought he was. And the very obvious pick here is we're bringing in Creek. Once again, Creek running into two easier lineups. He's had better weeks than his original week one. I do think he will be a good pick here. I am wondering if Cummings maybe has more upside to score more against teams that don't handle the ball well, against teams that have been giving up a lot of turnovers / steals to the other team. I do wonder if Cummings is going to be a better pick there. Saying that, there is no Baines, so less rim protectors to really stop Creek on the inside game. And I just don't think Adelaide are that strong inside. So it's very hard to pick between the two, which one I want the captaincy on as well. But I think I'll put it on Creek, maybe just a bit more safety in there. This way we end up with the 4 guys on the double, and we have Sobey on field. And it's not, I don't know, like this week it doesn't look great, but for my future planning is going to turn out really nice playing just a 1 week rental game. And even if we look at the Supercoach plus, we can see the break-evens, which is the important part. Now, Travers and Hookporty's break-evens plus Sobeys don't really matter to a degree. Obviously, Creek and Cummings, since we're bringing them in, it does matter a bit more. And unfortunately, they're not looking to make money unless they go ballistic. But I'm going to play for the upside and say they go ballistic. Now, Hookporty obviously has a pretty good break-even himself because of the good second game in the double game rounds. And then we have, Galloway with good break-even, Saar good break-even, Aldridge good break-even, and then it's really McDaniel and Henshaw that are a bit iffy for us on the money-making side of things. From here onwards, they may hopefully just sort of stay at the price they're at least. If they make money, then that'd be great, but I would just prefer if they don't lose money. And that's just the risk that I'm really taking this week. I mean, as I said, anyone that does want to know my actual outcomes as to what I choose, jump onto my X, because I will release on Wednesday night what my final selections will be, maybe Thursday morning, just depending on if I've made that decision or not. But this, as I said, it's not a money-making play, and that's the scary thing, that when I want to transition into the Tasmanian players next week, it'll be obviously it'd be a lot easier if I had more money, but as I said, the total points grab from the South Melbourne week that they've got set up this week, I think that could just be worth that could be worth so much. An additional potentially, I said maybe 30 points plus for Cummings at least. I'd say 35 plus if I had to be a little bit more realistic about it. I think 35 plus from him. Creek, I do think, I don't know who I'd go for if I wasn't going for Creek. Creek just, I think, a very obvious pick, and then a simple captain option. But yeah, as I said, Cummings, if Cummings didn't have this 19, I think he'd be almost locked in to most people's sides, and he'd be locked in as captain. But yeah, I guess that's my decision going through. As I said, jump into my X to figure out what I'm actually going to decide at the end of the day. Hopefully we can keep traveling in this way, and as I said, 12 more weeks and we got rank 1 locked up, so not too far away now. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate y'all jumping into the video. I guess just quickly, for anyone else that I guess are looking at other options there, captain options this week, once again, we only really have the 3 teams that are on it. If I had to choose any other captain outside of Creek, as I mentioned, it would be Creek or Cummings. I think would be pretty tight. I probably wouldn't be going for Kell or Wiley because they're a bit unreliable, and same with Travers. He hasn't really been a superstar either. I think Hookporty is actually a really good captain option here. Illawarra, I don't think is great inside, and I do think New Zealand, maybe not the strongest inside either. I think, honestly, Huck had a bad game last week, but I would expect to see him 20 plus, like 25 plus most games, honestly. So I would feel pretty safe for him for a 50 plus, but I do think Creek and Cummings are probably 60 plus if you're running one of them. So that's what, once again, I would personally select. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate y'all being here. Leave your comments down below, ask me questions, ask me about your team, tell me what your trades are, tell me if my trades are bad and I'm being stupid. As I said, jump on the X, feel free to ask me questions there as well. I will obviously do a post with this video attached. So yeah, once again, I just appreciate y'all being here, especially those that have stayed till the end and those that have subscribed. So until next week, guys, peace, later.